Hello, glad to see you on my channel. I really value it. And today I want to share with you a wonderful story. It's a dramatic story that will come as a total shock to everybody. It is a really amazing story. So enjoy watching it.
Maria knew that her family used to live differently. Her father was a businessman, passionate about his business. His capital was multiplying, and the family was in the happy hopes that life would always change for the better. When the only daughter was still very young, the mother and father had already discussed that they would get married to one of the European schools so that the girl perfectly mastered the language, received a diploma recognized abroad, and when she reached adulthood before her opened the whole world. But the father did not have time to realize all his plans. The only thing he managed to build a beautiful country house. Initially, it was planned to use it as a dacha, and then as a result of disreputable actions of partners, the father went bankrupt, and the family had to sell almost everything except for this house. The father insisted that the family moved into it from the city apartment, which also went for debts. But the failure did not manage to finally break the man, and he took up business again. True, they now lived apart. Father stayed in the city, worked day and night, but so far he could not even close to the previous level. The little money he earned, he transferred to his wife and daughter. His wife, Selena, was a former opera singer. She came to the regional theater without any exceptional voice. However, she was very good-looking and resembled either a beautiful gypsy or a heroine of an Indian movie. Therefore, she was not pushed into the shadows and began to give roles. She had time, as they say, bathed in the rays of glory. There were fans and huge bouquets of flowers and the best restaurants, and then spun a rapid romance with a businessman, and Galena married. Austin adored his wife and pampered as he could. Outfits, entertainment, resorts. After the birth of a daughter, he began to cherish already two beautiful ladies. But when his business collapsed, Selena had to recognize the need. To her credit, we can say that she truly loved her husband, and it never occurred to her to leave him because he was poor. On the contrary, she instilled faith in him in every way possible and promised him that she would endure hard times. Sometimes, however, she thought it was good that she and her daughter now lived so withdrawn and secluded, because she would have been embarrassed to meet up with her former acquaintances. Selena was now doing her own housework, growing the vegetable garden, wearing chintz dresses instead of silk, and her hands, which had been so delicate before, were darkened and calloused. Everyone whom she had known before would sympathize with her, and then among themselves would discuss how unhappy her fate had been, how unlucky she had been with her husband. And of course, there would be kind people who would suggest a quick divorce, return to the stage, and then find another life partner. But Selena did not want to listen to such advice. Let nature did not let her great talent, one talent she certainly had. She was able to find beauty in everything and enjoy life. Often in the early summer mornings, she went into the woods, taking with her only a small dog. Officially, she was thought to be walking with a poodle. But going into a place where no one could hear her, Selena sang, tried the power of her voice, performed her favorite arias, and once again immersed herself in that magical world of art, which she loved more than anything else in the world. And when she returned, she uncomplainingly took up the hose and watering can, the rake and the hoe. She tended the garden, admired the blooming roses, made jam. Maria never saw her mother to lose heart and lamented fate. On the contrary, she knew how to do everything, and it seemed that for her there were no problems. Whether it was to alter an old dress, set the holiday table when money is tight, or help her daughter with English, Selena easily coped with any task. Maria had a much harder time. She went to the village school closest to their home. There were few children in the class, only 8 people, and Maria did not make friends with anyone. Too different were upbringing and interests. Of course, Maria became an excellent student. By the time she went to the first grade, she already read fluently, counted to 100, knew a lot of English words, and loved to read. Therefore, in reading lessons, she frankly yearned classmates with difficulty learning to put syllables into words. Boys and girls willingly cheated from Maria's homework, but no one sought to get close to her. It was as if everyone felt that she was from a different test. All school years she perceived it quite painfully. She had no one to chat with at recess, to walk the school corridors, to share gossip with. After all, she had tried inviting her classmates to birthday parties before. The girls didn't refuse. Selena tried to set the table prettier. Maria stood by the window waiting, but no one came. Once Selena overheard one mom say to another at a parent-teacher conference, "Well, yes, I did not let my Angelica. They are rich. See what they have, a huge house. There is a huge expensive gifts should be given. But where do I have the money?" However, Angelica herself did not want to. This Maria is too smart for her. Selena did not tell her daughter this unintentionally over her remark. She only grinned bitterly. Rich. If this woman knew how their family had to save every penny because the head of the family wanted to invest all the free money in his new project. Maria had long ago stopped being capricious at the table, ate both semolina and pea soup, something that children usually do not like. She knew there were days when her mom just didn't have a chance to offer her anything else. Besides, Selena was basically her daughter's only friend. The rest of her friends were replaced by movies and books. She still read voraciously. Books gave her a rich figurative speech, taught her to express her thoughts accurately, but made her language somewhat archaic. And Maria simply adored movies, especially since all other entertainment was inaccessible to her. Cook a sandwich in the evening and sit down at the laptop to watch a new movie was the main joy for Maria. And if the choice was successful, she still longed before going to bed thinking about what she saw and worried about the fate of the characters. At a time when other girls were already in love and began to meet with peers, Maria only dreamed of a great feeling. Selena tried to think of something for her girl, that asked if her daughter would not go to the House of Culture at the disco, then offered her to enroll in a circle of ballroom dancing or playing the guitar in the same House of Culture. But Maria invariably refused. By this time, it seemed to her that she and her peers speak different languages, and there is no dictionary in the world that they could understand each other. Selena herself unexpectedly found friends. A well-known businessman in her town built a house in the same village, and in the summer he brought his family here. The women met on the street. A newly made dacha dweller in large dark glasses and a wide-brimmed hat was walking, looking around as if she was looking for something. It turned out that she had heard that there was a beautiful lake nearby, but she couldn't find her way to it. Selena showed her the way, but the lady wasn't in a hurry to leave, but gazed into her face. "Wait, I think I know you. I have a great memory. I'll remember now. Tell me, did you not perform in the theater?" Selena hummed. It seemed to her that her stage career was a thing of the past. Had she ever had one? Barbara, that was the name of her new acquaintance, had seized on that familiarity. She wasn't working. At the beginning of the summer, her husband had already taken her to Spain. But now his vacation was over, and he offered his wife and son to live in the countryside in the fresh air until fall, not in the dusty and heated city. "Be sure to come to us," Barbara called. "We have a piano. You will sing to us. We will organize a musical evening." Immediately she inquired about Selena's family, and when she learned that she had a daughter of 16, she was even more delighted. "And I have a son. Archibald will introduce them, and our children won't be bored this summer either." A few days later, Selena had a hard time convincing Maria to go to the house. They came back close to midnight, and for the first time they had very different impressions. Selena felt like she had a breath of fresh air. The exquisite table, the dishes that she had not eaten for 1,000 years, the fine Spanish wine. But all this paled before the magnificent instrument. It had been brought to the cottage because Archibald had graduated from music school, and his mother wanted him not to lose his fluency. But it was not often that she could get the young man to sit down at the piano. The young man preferred to lie in his room, play on the computer, or asked if he could invite his friends to the cottage, swim in the pool, have a party. Barbara was getting frustrated. She bitterly confessed to her new acquaintance that she did not fit in at all with the young people. She felt superfluous when her son's friends came to visit. But she simply fell in love with Maria. "Like a girl from a fairy tale," she repeated, "in that long dress and lush braids. Archibald, look at her, what a beauty. Is there anyone you know like her? And it's natural beauty, not cosmetics." Maria later confessed that she felt like a heifer in the market, and a heifer that no one wants to buy. A young man, tall, quite handsome, dressed in fashionable, expensive things, looked at her with bored eyes. He was going through a time when it was the perky, daring girls that he liked, not the modest ones. Mary thought that here in front of her, a representative of her circle, is something that her parents always talked about, but with him she cannot talk freely and at ease. Archibald admitted that he hates to read and does not look at school books. He goes to an elite school, and there the teachers look through their fingers if they are given papers downloaded from the internet. "Where do you think you'll go?" Selena asked with interest. The time when Maria would have to choose a specialty was not far off, so her mother wanted to know what young people preferred nowadays. Archibald shrugged his shoulders with a look that said he had no preferences at all and didn't really care. "Aerospace," Barbara answered hastily. "But it's hard," Selena wondered. "Math, physics. You have to have a special kind of mind. This is not a school program." "My husband has the rector as a friend," Barbara admitted with an embarrassed smile. "There was a big contract, all the computers, different equipment. My husband supplied it to the institute, so we won't have any problems with enrollment and studying. I'm also worried about whether Archibald will be able to cope, but somehow. Tutors, thank God, have never been canceled." The hostess served new cocktails, then asked Selena to sing, and she was so enthusiastic that the rest of the evening turned into a recital. Barbara was delighted and literally begged her guests to come to her more often. "There's nothing to do here," she said. "Until I met you, all I could talk about was our gardener. Lucy comes from the city, but she's always so busy, tending the flower beds from morning till night. You can only talk to her about plants. But why did you leave the stage, my dear? You've robbed us of such talent, Archibald, have you?" Archibald still shrugged his shoulders uncertainly and was the first to leave the company, showing that he was frankly bored and preferred the company of a computer. But Selena and Barbara met more than once in the coming weeks, and both came to realize how wonderful it would be if a romance were to develop between their children. The girl is modest, no pretensions, and yet from a good family, Barbara thought. It's a godsend. Archibald's a completely willowy boy, but age takes its toll, hormones play. He'll get mixed up with some hot girl who'll get him pregnant, then marry him off, and our son will be someone's whip boy forever and ever. No, we must make him interested in this Maria. This is a chance for Maria. Selena reasoned in turn. God knows if her father will be able to get back on his feet. It could very well be that we will spend the rest of our lives in poverty. And what kind of life would that be for the car? Beggars make beggars. She'll marry some penniless boy, have children, and Maria will fight every day to feed them. And then she'll be lucky. A lot of rich families don't want to see a girl with nothing, and Barbara's drooling over Maria. The guy and the girl are still very young, but that's good. Let them be friends for now, get used to each other. And if, after graduating from school, they become a couple, then Maria's life will change. There will be in beautiful dresses and foreign trips and a completely different circle of acquaintances. In addition, Archibald's parents and she will help her to get a profession that Maria wants. Selena had never realized that her daughter had recently fallen in love, and not with the neighbor's son. And Maria herself believed that this feeling is given to her for life, as in her favorite novels. Her choice was a popular artist, of those about whom it is written that they deprive sleep all the girls of the country. Maria was not embarrassed by the age difference. If there was any psychologist, he would explain to her that she sees in this man as not only a potential lover, but also a father, which she essentially did not have because her father was always busy and come home could only rarely and for a few hours. In the eyes of others, Maria became even more strange. She now sat almost all the time in her room and in public appeared with a detached look. It was noticeable that her thoughts were wandering somewhere. For the first time, she had enough sources to feed her feeling. The network was flooded with portraits of her hero. Newspapers printed many articles about him. From them, Maria learned that he was divorced and currently single. Never has she experienced such a sense of jubilation as having read about it. But the main thing, of course, were the movies. She watched them endlessly and always imagined herself in the heroine's shoes. She was the one who fell in love with the characters he embodied on the screen. She was kidnapped and rescued. She was on her knees. For her sake, they were ready for the most insane feats. Older women would only laugh at such romantic nonsense. But among married peers, such ardent feelings were widespread. The truth behaved girls a little differently. They were not shy to call themselves fans. They made their way to concerts, to creative meetings, solicited autographs on duty at the entrances. Often a musician or artist was honored by the whole club, distributing among themselves the duties of who will get posters, t-shirts, recognize the phone, or take a picture, if caught on the way out of the theater. Photographs, gift inscriptions, and sometimes some small personal items also became common property. Maria could never join such a fan club. She was naively convinced that her feeling was the strongest, and none other than she was worthy of reciprocal love. Meanwhile, her and Archibald's mothers tried to bring the young people together. They found reasons to arrange some joint evenings and even tried to send Mary and Archibald for a walk, under the pretext, "Some with white thread. There is such a beautiful nature, and Archibald has not yet seen it. You will show him the local places." Both the boy and the girl refused as much as they could. Once Maria even quarreled with her mother for the first time. The neighbors were having a party at Archibald's place, and Barbara insisted that he invite Maria too. Mother, she wouldn't fit in. Her son urged her. Maria would come again in her trampy dress, and she would simply be taken for our servant. Not if you pay her enough attention, the mother insisted. Believe me, I know our people. At best, no one will say a word to her. At worst, they'll be subtle about her appearance. She'll never come back to us after that. If you like this girl, why do you want to humiliate her? She's 10 times prettier than your tomboys, her mother said in her heart. Archibald shrugged his shoulders. Well, if you want to, go ahead. You can tell her on my behalf that I'm inviting her. And yourself. Archibald turned away. Barbara tapped her forehead with her fist, showing what she thought of her son's mental abilities, and left the room. But Maria, when the invitation was conveyed to her, refused to go flatly. There will probably be snobs like Archibald in that company, and I have no business there. She was right to refuse, Archibald said, relieved that Mary would not be there. You'll be so different from the others that I'll have to take you to a psychiatrist. Selena looked at her daughter bitterly. No boyfriend, no girlfriends, just books and a computer. Are you ashamed to be the mother of such a daughter? Maria replied with sudden harshness and disappeared into her room, slamming the door. Selena was upset to the point of tears, so much so that she called her husband and told him about the conversation with her daughter. She had never discussed such things with him before. I understand our girl is still very young. She has time ahead of her, but judging by her behavior, I am so afraid that she will miss everything. Nowadays, girls start looking at good guys early. And if Maria gets pregnant later than the others, it may turn out that everyone has already been snatched up, all suitable young men are married, and then wait for some divorce with alimony. Galia, you're talking nonsense. The tone of the husband was cheerful. Believe me, there will still be bright times, and our Mary's life will be completely different than it is now. For now, just leave her alone and don't impose that neighbor boy on her if she doesn't like him. Selena had no choice but to comply with a sigh. In the meantime, Maria was planning a real adventure, which not so long ago would never have dared. At one time, when they studied Eugene Onegin at school and learned by heart Leslie's letter, this situation seemed to school children hopelessly archaic, distant. None of them could get into such a situation. But now Marie could only hope that she would not receive as cruel a response as Leslie. Let Anthony show himself like Onegin at the end of the novel and say the cherished words. I know my age is measured, but that my life may last. I must be sure in the morning that I shall see you in the afternoon. Maria composed this letter over several days. It was 3 pages long, and an outsider, looking at it with dispassionate eyes, would have said that it really resembled a letter from a modern Leslie. Mary described her sheltered life, confessed that the first movie with Anthony struck her, and from that moment she realized that he was very special. There are all other men in him. No one else can understand and appreciate her. And she in turn knows she is ready to devote her whole life to him. Even though she is much younger than him, she is ready to wait until she can be by his side. And so on and so forth. Maria did not dare to attach a photograph of herself to this letter. It seemed to her that the text was enough. She hesitated for a long time before she pressed the send button. And then it was as if someone had done it for her. When she saw that the letter had gone and was already at the addressee, Maria covered her face with her hands and sat like that for a long time. She wondered what she had done. Anthony was teetering on a delicate edge. He called himself a non-drinking alcoholic, but he was very afraid of falling off the wagon. He could be considered a fortunate man, despite a childhood spent in poverty. He came from a noble family in which all the men served in the army. There were among them both naval officers and hussars. In the formidable era of World War I, the Revolution, and then the Civil War, almost all the male members of the family perished. That left the women, who later were not so fortunate either. Many of them went through the camps. Great-grandmother Anthony had to take her maiden name and sit quietly, like a mouse, in a remote provincial town to earn a living sewing, embroidery, and knitting. She was a great master. But her only son went into the army. After becoming a lieutenant, he married and settled with his wife in a military town. From there, he went to the front when the war started. His mother did not even have to say goodbye to him. He died in the same year, 1941. Only a few years later, his young wife with a child in her arms was able to reach her mother-in-law. The boy Mickey was surprisingly good and clever. He became a real idol for his mother and grandmother, although they could not spoil him during the difficult wartime. And no one was surprised that after school he chose the military path. However, the appearance of Yuri has already brought him some fame. He was invited to star in the movies, and he played several roles of minor, true, but brought him fans. He could probably make a favorable marriage to marry an actress or at least a girl from a rich family, but it never occurred to him. His wife was an ordinary salesgirl. She followed him later on long journeys through military towns. Mickey never took the movie as his life's work and remained, as they say, a war bone. He didn't let his son Anthony spoil his wife either, although the boy got her hard and was the only child in the family. There was a daily regimen in hardening with snow or ice water, and the simplest, not at all fashionable things in the boy's closet. Anthony was forbidden to cry, even when he was in pain. When he fell from his horse and broke his arm, he managed to hold back his tears, even though it was very painful. But soon he was already writing perfectly, learned from familiar guys to play the guitar, and from his father and mother to dance the waltz. His father believed that a real military man should not fall down, asking the girl to dance. As for the appearance of Anthony, stood out even among the men of his kind, where there were only handsome. "You're an Apollo," an old teacher once told him. But here in the footsteps of his father, the young man was not going to go. He wanted to become an actor and only an actor. In vain, parents persuaded him that the theater schools are a huge competition, and without black, or at least without stage experience, his chances of getting not that equal to zero and tend to a negative value. Anthony achieved his goal and passed the competition in the legendary Shepka, shown already in his student years, and then got into one of the leading theaters of the country. He was noticed in classical performances and began to call in fashionable entertainment projects. And then a famous woman director gave him a role in his picture. And it went on. The charm of the artist was especially noticeable on the screen. Soon his name became almost synonymous with the success of the picture. Anthony necessarily called in historical films. No one looked so organically in the role of an aristocrat. And Nestorov could play anyone, though the emperor, though cavalry guard. He played in fearless loners, who in our days fought with gangsters, uncovered monstrous conspiracies. Anthony did not need doublers when it was necessary to shoot, fencing, dancing. He even sang well. In short, he was a godsend to the directors. He was so busy that his parents didn't see him for months, and even for him, young, healthy, and trained, such a load was not always at his strength. Filming was replaced by performances, concerts, projects, creative meetings, tours. He had long forgotten what the regime, and as it seemed to him, for a whole century, fate did not give him a good night's sleep. And of course, it was not without feasts. When he met Lucy, he already liked to drink. Lucy was an assistant director, cooked in the same creative kitchen, understood everything. And yet, she tried to make sure that Anthony did not drink. When they began to live together, at home alcohol was not at home. Friends who do not think the conversation without a bottle, Lucy did not invite. Anthony's mother simply clung to the young woman, insisted that her son married her officially. "That I will be calm for you," she repeated. Anthony's earnings by that time seemed to his parents fabulous. He bought his father and mother a nice apartment. He bought another one for himself and Lucy. The bride insisted that the wedding was modest, almost secret, only the closest people, and only champagne of drinks. And yet, before the birth of his son, Anthony had several occasions to get drunk. Once he was robbed and badly beaten. Pregnant Lucy fainted when the police brought him in, bloody and barely standing on his feet. And when their son was born, Lucy insisted that her husband get codependent. If Anthony's character had a little more paternal traits, he would have lived with Lucy all his life. Attractive appearance with an easy character, an excellent hostess, faithful wife. What else do you need for a life partner? But too nervous and twitchy was an actor's life. Too many temptations. Anthony cheated on his wife once, another first during the tour, trying to ensure that she did not know about anything. Then it has almost become a habit. Women in his life changed. He knew that his wife guessed everything, but tried not to think about her feelings. After all, she had to realize that novels are something almost inevitable associated with the acting profession. Lucy did not say anything to him, lived, tightly compressed lips. Anthony did not immediately notice that they began to communicate less and less. He came home so tired that he was no longer to talk. He didn't always have the energy to eat. Getting to bed and sleeping was the only thing he wanted to do, and he didn't care whether he slept in the marital bed or on the living room couch. He didn't know how his son was growing up, had never been to a parent-teacher conference, couldn't even tell him the number of the school Alexander went to. When the boy turned 16, he bought him a cool motorcycle, as if he wanted to make up for all the lost time with an expensive gift. Lucy was against it. She, according to her, went crazy looking at the teenagers who were on the streets. 2 months later, Alexander crashed to death, and Anthony stayed with the family for 2 days. But on the third, on the very day of the funeral, flew away. He was waiting for the shooting, which could not be canceled. After that, Lucy filed for divorce. Anthony did not try to keep her. Each new picture was a clean slate in his life. So why not, after such a tragic ending as his son's death, start his whole life with the same clean slate? Only, God forbid, now not to marry at once, but to be a bachelor for a number of years. The following years brought Anthony a few non-serious, fleeting romances. But there must have been a wormhole undermining him from within, because he began to drink more and more often. Bragged that he does not cost nothing to drink a lot. He gets tipsy much later than all those who sit at the table. It didn't end well. First, Anthony began to disrupt the shooting, was late or came in such a state that did not keep on his feet. He was forgiven for a while. Then the directors began to express dissatisfaction. Too expensive, cost addiction of a famous actor. Anthony, whose offers of new roles always exceeded his capabilities, broke up with several directors and at some time went to the theater. However, here the case went even worse. Nestorov did not cost nothing to come stone, even at the premiere. He forgot the text, ridiculed partners, insulted the audience. With one of them even fought. And since nowadays all the audience with camera phones, the scandal could get big. They managed to cover it up with great difficulty, and it was by no means the merit of Anthony. Finally, the real trouble came. Sitting drunk behind the wheel, Nestorov hit a man. Fortunately, he survived, but long recovered from severe injuries. Here Anthony had to sober up, not only literally, but also figuratively. He collected a very large sum of money for the victim and what to hide for those who dealt with this case, and received a suspended sentence. After that, he got coded again, and in addition, he underwent a serious course of rehabilitation. There wasn't a drop of alcohol in the house, but something happened to Anthony's head. His memory was sharply impaired. It began to seem to him that the events of long past days occurred only yesterday, and what happened the day before receded into the distant past. Anthony was frightened. He realized that our time could end as an artist. He will not be able to memorize the text of the next birth, will not orient himself, what he should do and say in the course of the performance. Having collected the last funds, he went abroad for treatment, disappeared for a long time, did not give anyone news about himself, only his parents knew where he was and what happened to him. Anthony returned not alone, but with an assistant, who he called his right hand. Alex he entrusted to conduct all his affairs concerning contracts, schedule of the day not to forget anything, organization of meetings and other things. And himself focused only on acting. Physically, he managed to recover. He lost weight, regained a good complexion, a trim figure. Gray hair could successfully hide the makeup artist. And thanks to these events, Stone's game has gained even more depth than before. Now Anthony was again in demand. He played several bright roles, earned good money. With women, he now does not contact at all, which is very upsetting to his elderly parents, who still dreamed of grandchildren. As for the craving for alcohol, it remained, but only Nestorov learned to fight it, and simply left the company if there was supposed to be a feast with a drink. He was in that middle age, when the strength is still enough, and loneliness is not frightening. But you already realize that you need to make efforts, a lot of effort to maintain health and appearance at this level. Anything less and you'll be pushed out by the young. And to lose his job, Anthony feared more than anything in the world. Profession actor gave him all the fame, money, travel, fans about whom they say it is worth a snap of the fingers and will come running. But only a snap of this click. None of the girls could not wait. Anthony followed the daily regimen as strictly as it would be a sportsman. Ate only healthy food. He had his own nutritionist, did not skip classes at the gym, and did not avoid rejuvenating procedures. Over time, he began to trust his secretary more and more, deep down realizing that he was superior to him in mind and character. But Alex skillfully defended his interests in everything that concerned the business sphere, did not teach, did not judge, was able to keep his mouth shut, and even admirers managed to keep at a distance so that they did not complicate Anthony's life. Alex told little about himself, but Anthony knew something about him, because a man who kept his life behind 7 seals, he would never let him close to him. If in Anthony's family all men were military, then Alex came from a merchant family, and before the revolution all the merchants conducted their business extremely successfully and became famous patrons of the arts, donated a lot to the arts, bought paintings of young artists, invested in the construction of theaters and libraries. Alex's parents divorced early. His father married a young woman, and the first wife had to raise 4 sons alone. How much money could a school teacher make there? The father arranged everything so that he paid symbolic alimony, and the mother had to deny herself everything so that the children were at least fed. In addition, she was desperately short of time. The mother came home, loaded with the notebooks of her students, and checked them until late at night. She could no longer keep track of her own children, and they often got into trouble. There were fights, broken windows, even petty thefts. Alex grew up the most hooligan of the 4, and once almost went to the penal colony together with older kids. He participated in robbery of a market stall. After he miraculously managed to limit himself to the registration in the police, his mother transferred Alex to another school away from the shame, as she said. She didn't want her colleagues to keep complaining about her son every break. But Alex had suddenly gotten smart. He must have gotten a good shake. The prospect of losing his freedom shocked and horrified him. That's when he decided to go to law school. The competition for law school was always big. But in his final year, Alex sat behind the textbooks for days and nights and successfully passed the exams. At the university, it turned out that he has a good syllable, and having received a diploma, he came to work in a newspaper, engaged in journalistic investigations. One of them turned out to be so sharp that the newspaper was closed because a large official did not like to see himself in an unflattering light. At one time, Alex was engaged in crisis psychology, received a 2nd degree. He had his own agency. Actor Anthony, whose life was then going under the rocks, turned to him for help. Cooperation was so successful that Nestorov wanted to take Alex to himself to work only for him. He promised such a percentage of royalties that Alex decided to try. And so they have been working together for about 5 years, and both of them were happy with it. Anthony was so grateful to his secretary that he even arranged a role for him in the picture. He himself played a battalion commander. Alex got the role of a fighter, which he successfully coped with. Well, consider yourself saved for history, young and beautiful, laughed Anthony. Well, did you like to shoot? Do you want more? No, Alex refused. Thanks for the experience, but I prefer to do my own thing. Fame is not for me. This summer, Both the artist and his assistant looked bright. By mid-July, Anthony planned to be free and go somewhere on the islands of the Southern Hemisphere. He offered Alex to go with him and even undertook to take for himself a large part of the expenses. But he didn't agree. Alex knew that his work with Anthony was good, but it was temporary. That's why he was writing the book, planning to organize his own psychology courses soon. All this required time. And in the remaining weeks of the summer, he was going to take a trip up north. He couldn't stand the relaxing heat, and the word travel usually meant the Baltic states or Scandinavia. While Anthony was shooting, the artist only occasionally had free days. And now he was half lying in a chair, putting a special mask over his eyes. Alex was going through the mail. He read out some business correspondence to the chief, and then suddenly stopped talking. "Look, what a nice letter came to you," he finally said. "From whom?" Anthony slightly raised an eyebrow. "Written by a very young girl." "Ah," stretched the artist and instantly lost all interest in the letter. He'd seen enough of these young girls to make him wait until he was old enough to let them go. "No, it's not an ordinary message," Alex continued. "They don't declare their love to you. They don't offer to give birth to a child from you. They don't even ask for your autograph. You're just being given your soul." And since Anthony was silent, Alex read him Maria's letter. For several minutes, neither man spoke a word. Both men, who already had a rich life experience, were embarrassed. But it was not vulgarity that had long ago failed to impress them. And now before them was the confession of a girl naive and pure. They had not seen such a girl for a long time. Maybe only in their youth, when they were almost children themselves. "How old is she?" Anthony finally asked. 16, Alex answered at once. He snatched that number from the text. "Answer her something yourself," Anthony said. "I'm not good at writing." "But she's waiting to hear from you." "Well, write in my name. I have no secrets from you. Somehow, write softly so as not to offend. Like, I'm grateful and all that. Just don't promise I'll meet her. I don't need any more accusations of pedophilia." Alex nodded. Soon after that, the business distracted his thoughts from the letter. He remembered it already late in the evening as a matter unpleasant but necessary to do. He knew that giving this young girl a turn, even in the mildest form, would be a blow to her, but there was no other way out. On behalf of Anthony, Alex wrote to Marie that he was grateful for her sincerity and such a high evaluation of his acting. However, such is the life of all young girls fall in love with famous people, singers, musicians, artists. It is akin to a disease, which must be overcome. Later this feeling will pass, and only a good memory will remain. He, Anthony, wishes Marie that her life turned out happily. She met a worthy man, whom she will love, and found a profession to her liking. It means a lot. Professional success will always keep afloat in difficult moments. And he also hopes that Maria will continue to watch his paintings, and he in turn will try not to disappoint her with his game. He finished with the words, "Yours sincerely." After sending this letter, Alex, for some reason, could not sleep for a long time. Maria had lost both peace and sleep in the last days. At night, she woke up several times and checked the mail. The hope of getting an answer and the horror of what she had done, all these strong worries were reflected on her face. And her mother had asked her more than once if she was ill. She opened Alex's letter half an hour after it had been sent. It burned her like a blow to the face. She had never felt such pain and disappointment before. Though really, what had she hoped for? That her favorite artist would come riding after her on a white horse. Or at least himself will get her phone number and call with the words, "I've been looking for you all my life. Only you can save me from loneliness." God, what an idiot she is. The whole next day, Maria sat in her room. Selena went to her new friend. At first, Maria decided not to say anything, but it turned out she was in too much pain to say anything. This letter revealed the fact that she was embarrassed by her poverty, feeling that she deserved a better life. If she were very rich or very famous, her favorite actor would speak to her very differently. He wouldn't dare reject her. So Maria composed the following letter. She thanked Anthony for the answer, but she noticed that he did not know her at all, so the bright future he had drawn for her did not suit her. Her father is too rich. He can't imagine that his daughter will have to work. Most likely, he'll try to get his heiress into a lucrative marriage with one of his partners, maybe one of those connected to the world of filmmaking, producing movies. In one thing you are right, Maria wrote, of course, I will soon look back on what I addressed to you as a prank. I am still so young. What can you do? I can play. And I wish you a quiet and happy old age, satisfaction from the roles played, and of course, health. She sent off her message and felt some relief. Alex did not expect any reply. He had no doubt that the girl would be upset because he had practically deprived her of any hopes for reciprocity. But he shared the artist's opinion in this case. It was best to do exactly that. Cannot be a favorite of the public, spoiled by fame, past the fire and water, and nothing to say about the copper pipes. Seriously consider the novel with Provincial Girl, which is also only 16 years old. Rejection is a very painful wound, but having received it, the soul will begin to heal. Another thing, empty promises, which only hurt the heart and deprive sleep. But when he received Maria's return letter, he raised his eyebrows in surprise. Was he mistaken? The image of a rich girl, a woman who burned through life, and that naive first message, which had touched him involuntarily, did not fit in his mind. He decided to see this miracle of nature for himself. He managed to get the right address quickly, because Maria did not hide her name and surname, and the name of the village slipped into the text. Alex looked at the map. It was not so far to go, only a few hours by car. Besides, it was the place he had long wanted to visit, with its marvelous wooden architecture, picturesque forests and lakes. He convinced himself that he would go there first of all to admire nature. He was ashamed to admit to himself that he had been thwarted by a letter from a young girl. Choosing the first day off, Alex realized his intention. The road was really very pleasant, and the vegetation along the way turned out to be luxurious. He reached the village without any adventures, but on the village streets he got a little lost. He had to ask passersby for the right address. "And this is where you need to go," said an elderly woman, pointing the way. "When it seems to you that you have passed the whole village, and further only a forest, you do not be embarrassed and go on. It's only 3 minutes away. Then it's their house and you'll see how hermit-like they live." Alex wasn't happy about not being able to see the house without being seen. Apparently, few people come to such a remote area. His car would be noticed by the owners at once, so he would have to think of something. Soon he was pulling up beside an elegant fence. He liked the house at once, 2-story, but without any pretentiousness, plastered, drowning in flowers. It involuntarily turned his thoughts to the country houses of the 19th century. On the lawn stood a simple wooden swing, on which sat a girl with a book in her hands. She raised her head when she heard the noise of a car, and when the car stopped, she stood up in anticipation. Alex got out of the car and approached the fence. The girl approached as well. It could only be Maria, the one he wanted to see. She was wearing a simple light-colored dress. Her hair was braided into a thick braid, but unruly strands were dislodged, twisted around her face. If the neighbor boy did not appreciate Maria because she was very different from the girls of the circle, Alex immediately noticed that she was rarely beautiful. Perhaps he had never seen such a girl in his life. He didn't mean girls whose attractiveness was due to skillful makeup. "Did you want something?" Maria asked. Alex nervously took off his glasses. He was worried, and he didn't understand why, but he had to answer something. "I can't find Lake Bright somewhere," he said. "You've gone a bit wrong." Maria came out on the road and pointed out the direction. "You need to go to the river, then over the bridge and further along the concrete. It's pretty far. There's no sign, so be careful you don't miss a turn. The banks there are inconvenient. We're overgrown. To fish, to get to the water, you need to know the places." "Thank you," Alex smiled, catching himself trying to please this girl. He, a 40-year-old man, couldn't help it. He had no doubt now that it was Maria who was in front of him. It was none other than this girl who had written that very letter, and he could see now that she was not rich at all. Yes, it was a beautiful house, but there was nothing to suggest luxury, and Maria was dressed so plainly, if not poorly. He didn't want to leave. He frantically searched for an excuse to ask Maria about something else, or at least to ask her for a drink. Anything to make her stay longer. But Alex had never felt so awkward and slow. Maria considered her mission accomplished, nodded goodbye to him, and went into the house. Alex drove back slowly. as if it was against his will to leave this place. He knew that he could hardly forget this girl, though he had no reason to see her again. And frankly, it was already crazy what he thought of her. That night, he said to Anthony, "You're lucky. What's the matter?" The artist was surprised. "No, brother, you're wrong. On the contrary, I'm afraid that the last picture is going to get bad reviews. The pay was excellent, but the director has fallen out of favor, up there at the top. Some kind of he has the wrong political position. And I'm afraid that this role will come out in my favor. I'll make inquiries," Alex said cautiously. He was always honest with his patron and never gave him false hope. "And why do you say that I'm lucky?" Nestorov asked. Alex put his hands behind his head. They were sitting on the balcony. The artist took care of his skin from the sun, so they were protected from the scorching rays by a green, transparent canopy. "Remember that girl who wrote you a letter?" Anthony narrowed his eyebrows, remembering, and Alex realized that he had long forgotten both the letter and the one who had sent it. "She's very good," he said carelessly. "I think, even in the movies, they would have grabbed for such a girl." "I beg you," Anthony's voice was both careless and tired at the same time. "You would know how many years I have been literally drowning in the love of such young beauties. And every one of them I wanted to ask what's next, because these girls have their own script in their heads. They don't need me as I am. Each of them is in love with one or another of my heroes and identifies him with me. And I'm not going to wear the mask of Superman and Ladies' Man for the sake of someone else's whims forever. That's for sure," Alex grinned. He remembered how Anthony could get angry if the food he liked wasn't cooked the way he liked it, or the water in the bathtub was too hot. He could act out a whole drama if he had a headache and the pills didn't help right away. Alex sometimes wondered what Anthony had been like as a child and young man. He couldn't have grown up so spoiled. He would have been hounded in any company. But now they forgive him for his quirks, like a movie star. "Did this girl, come here?" Anthony wrinkled his nose. "Now that I think about it, I told you I didn't want to go out with her. I'm not a child molester." "No, we met by chance," and Alex changed the subject. And Anthony thought that perhaps the only woman who wouldn't irritate him was his ex-wife, Lucy. She knew him. She had seen him sick and healthy, cranky, crying, drunk. And how long she loved him, it was him, and not created by him screen images. Loved him no matter what. Now he realized that he would like to meet Lucy's old age with her. If she were there for him, he wouldn't be afraid to grow old. She wouldn't have left him if he'd been rejected by the movie industry and was earning a pittance, or if he'd been crushed by a stroke. She hadn't forgiven him for her son's death, or the fact that when that one was lowered into the grave, Anthony wasn't around. But Lucy couldn't be blamed for that. And Anthony couldn't ask her to come back. Lucy had been married for a long time and had even given birth to a late baby, a girl. Anthony had wanted to call his ex-wife many times, but Lucy had made it clear to him not to interfere in her life anymore. Anthony had neither the energy nor the desire to build something new on those ruins. He was burned out. So it was necessary to try on himself the role of a hermit of goodwill, some mysterious monk, inaccessible to any of the women, and play this role with talent and dignity. Stay on schedule. Austin came home unexpectedly. Selena and Maria are used to that if he comes, then closer to the evening, breaks out for a few hours, and at dawn is already hurrying back to the city, to his business. But this time a familiar car came to the house in the morning, and the look of the husband and father was mysterious. His eyes were shining, as if he had become 10 years younger. Of course, the people at home were overjoyed, but he seemed to hesitate to tell them the news. It was not until they were all seated at the table and Selena had served coffee and cream pancakes that Austin revealed his secret. "It's all worked out, my dears," he said. "You may consider that I'm not just back on my feet. I've taken off. All those years of hard labor have paid off. We landed a very large project with a European company, and it's a success. The next one is coming up, but your life is about to change dramatically." Selena looked at her husband in bewilderment. "Selena, my poor girl, I understand how difficult it was for you to live here in the middle of nowhere. Now this house will really become a summer house, as originally planned. We'll have a nice mansion in the city, in a quiet, green neighborhood. You'll go on vacation to Europe this year, and Maria will leave this country school immediately. She can go to a grammar school or go abroad to study at all, as she decides. Austin shifted his gaze from his wife to his daughter, but both were too dazed to speak. "Why did you hide everything until the very last minute?" Selena asked. "I'm sorry, but businessmen are sometimes more superstitious than old women. I was afraid if something went wrong, the disappointment would be too cruel for you." It wasn't until late in the evening that Selena realized she could afford everything she'd ever dreamed of. Tomorrow, she could go to the beauty salon. From there, she could go shopping, buy herself things, not because she couldn't do without them, but simply because she liked them. And the day can be in the theater, meetings with old friends, travel, books, theaters, art galleries. How many opportunities open to her now? She's not old yet. She'll enjoy life. "Austin, I am afraid of one thing," she said to her husband when she was alone with him. "Of what?" "Maria. She's grown up very special, and if she hasn't found herself here, I doubt she'll find it easy to fit in with her wealthy peers. It's all so foreign to her. Have you noticed? She doesn't wear makeup. She's never been to a hairdresser in her life. To these city girls, she'll be, well, like in the old movie The Witch. She's a savage, in a word. Let's ask her," Austin suggested. "If she wants to change her lifestyle, to be like her peers, she can do it." To her parents' amazement, Maria asked to go to town. "I feel that I really have a lot to lose if I stay here," she said. Daddy, your money has really come at such a good time." They agreed that Maria would return to the city with her father, first to see the mansion he had bought, to get a taste of city life, and then they would return for Selena, who would prepare for the move. When Maria stood on the doorstep a week later, Selena hardly recognized her own daughter. It was because the girl had never radically changed her style that the change seemed so striking. "I consulted with my partner's wife. She picked Maria up and took her to her stylist. And then they went shopping. It was nice, wasn't it?" "It was," Selena said quietly. No one could think that the girl looked like her 19th century counterpart. Her curly hair had acquired a fashionable shade and fell in a careless mane. Impeccably chosen clothes outlined a slender figure. And most importantly, her face had changed. It was unknown how, but the makeup not only emphasized the beauty of the girl, but her gaze now had a cold, regal look. Exactly my Maria overnight turned from a country girl to a lady of high society, an aristocrat, thought Selena. And Maria remembered the hours she spent in the beauty parlor, then the endless fitting, and finally, she stood in front of the mirror and looked at herself as if she were someone else. This girl will not be humiliated, begging for someone's love. She herself will choose who is worthy of her attention. Before leaving town, Maria asked her father to take a picture of her standing next to an expensive motorcycle, carelessly leaning on the handlebars. It turned out that she is also very photogenic. The photo turned out to be at least on the cover of an expensive magazine. Selena decided to have a farewell dinner. She invited Barbara and her son. Of course, she had no idea how her friend's situation had changed. She was just sad that her friend was leaving, which meant that she would be bored here until the end of the summer, when her husband would take her back to the city. Barbara had probably gone to great lengths to persuade Archibald to go with her, assuring him it was the last time. "Well, if your plan to make a couple of us didn't work out, I don't have to go," he asked. "Archibald, I'm begging you. You have to be civilized after all. We've been so good at socializing all summer." "You've been socializing," the young man reminded him. "What's that got to do with me?" "Let's take them a bunch of flowers," the mother decided. "The garden has some lovely roses in bloom. And you'll invite Maria to visit us when we're back in town. You still have the idea of bringing us together." Archibald grinned. But when he saw Maria, he was speechless. He silently handed her the flowers, wondering where his eyes had been all this time. The girls he knew so well, who came to visit him, were no match for her. But only this Maria needed him as little as the former humble country girl with the scythe. She thanked him indifferently for the flowers and went off to fuss about the table. For the rest of the evening, he followed her like a shadow. He was literally killed when Maria said goodbye with indifferent politeness. On the way home, Barbara looked at her son with a sneer. "Well," she asked, "or do you still think your mother is a fool? Or am I right that this girl was worth paying attention to?" The boy was silent, but from the way he stared at one point, The way his chin twitched, Barbara realized her son was in pain. She let him sulk a little longer, then patted his arm. "Don't worry so much," she said. "Yes, Maria's situation has changed. She is now a girl from a rich family, but her heart is still free. Her mom and I talked today. Maria is not seeing anyone and Selena is worried that she still hasn't made any friends. So if you don't let this one slip through your fingers, you might be able to give her attention before she likes someone else." "Come," said Archibald bitterly. "She doesn't like me at all. And remember, my dear, how you behaved, showing in every possible way that you weren't interested in that girl. She and mommy would come over and you'd look for any opportunity to get away. You were ashamed to invite her into your company. When she looked unattractive from your point of view, you looked at her like some kind of servant." Barbara got angry. "Now you'll have to redeem all that. You'll buy flowers and gifts and look her in the eye." "Mom, why did you call me by such a stupid name?" Archibald suddenly asked. "If Maria and I were talking, I can't imagine what she would call me. I notice when we talk, she avoids saying my name. I think it's funny to her." Barbara was a little embarrassed. When her son had come into the world, common names were in vogue, which she strongly disliked. "It was crazy," she said to her husband, "because before the peasant women used to bring a chicken or a piece of lard to the priest so that he could choose a prettier name for the child, like the gentleman. And now Foma and Foka play in the yard with some Mikula. No, let our boy have a name like the hero of the novel. The fashion will pass away, but the name will remain." "Well," she said, "you're an adult. You can go to the registry office and change it. My father and I wanted to do what was best." But Archibald wasn't listening. His gaze wandered somewhere, and Barbara realized he was thinking about Maria. And now he was writing that he paid tribute to her imagination, but there was no need to make up someone else's life. "What's wrong with living in the country?" he asked. "You can fantasize all you want, but if you really try to live the way the golden youth do, there's no telling whether you'd like it or not." "I don't think I would. Your strength is not only in beauty, but in kindness, sincerity, and naturalness. Don't lose it." Maria's cheeks flushed. 1,000 questions crowded into her mind. How did Anthony know where she lived, what she looked like? This she had certainly not written to him. Had he secretly come and seen her? She had long since forgotten about the stranger who had asked her for directions. Not long ago, this blow would have seemed to her a very severe blow, for her deception would have been discovered. The poor girl, out of resentment, decided to pretend to be a princess. But now it turns out she wasn't even lying. So she sent back the very picture her father had taken of her. It certainly didn't make Maria look like a provincial girl. "We'd all play a little," Maria wrote, not realizing that she would hit not in the eye, but in the eye. Alex even recoiled from the screen, having received this picture. Squinting, the girl was looking straight into his eyes. Was he mistaken? But he already knew Maria's last name, and it wasn't hard for him to make inquiries. It turned out that her father really managed to pull off a big score. Most likely, the family would now move out of the wilderness, and soon Maria would be the talk of the town. The story was so unusual that Alex did not hold back, and at the first opportunity, told Anthony that the girl he was interested in was actually very rich. "Really?" The artist opened his eyes wide. "Well, you managed to interest me. Invite her over." "Why?" Alex was not only surprised, but alarmed. "Maybe I'm pleased that I, at my age, can still interest very young girls. Maybe I'm such a monster that I just want to stroke my ego." The artist looked at his secretary with a sneer. This was what Alex disliked most about his character. At some moments his patron closed down, could become violent, did things that at other times were completely uncharacteristic of him. But it was impossible to influence him at that time. He acted like a child, out of pure stubbornness against fate, even though he knew that it could lead to bad consequences for him. "See that you invite her," repeated the artist, rising. "If you forget, I'll remind you." "Could we meet you?" wrote Alex to Marie. One could imagine how these words excited the girl. Of course she wanted this meeting, but she realized that she was the one who was expected to decide where and when the meeting would take place. Being completely inexperienced, she was afraid to set a date in a park, or a cafe, or a restaurant. Maria hardly knew the city, had never been anywhere, and in fact, this was her first date. And though maybe it was completely wrong, she'd invited Stone to that new house her father had bought. Asked him to come over in the afternoon when Austin was sure to be at work. We'll have to talk, Maria thought, looking forward to meeting Anthony, and without anyone interrupting. And somewhere in the park, God knows who'll be around. He's a famous man. They probably don't give him a pass. Everything worked out very well. Selena affairs were delayed in the village, and Maria and her father returned to the city. She spent a long time trying on outfits and finally settled on an exquisite dress, one of her latest purchases. Since the morning her father left for work, she hadn't been able to find a place to sit. And when she heard the car pull up, she went downstairs without waiting for the bell to ring. She opened the door, frozen with excitement. What was her amazement and disappointment when on the threshold she saw not the artist, but the very man who had asked her for directions not so long ago. And now she remembered him. "You," she exclaimed. There was both disappointment in that exclamation and a plea to fate to let this turn out to be a mistake. "I need to talk to you," Alex said. "May I come in?" Not understanding anything, Maria backed away from the door. Following the hallway was the living room. Alex waited until Maria sat down and sat on the edge of the couch. "I realized you weren't expecting me," he said. "But where did you come from?" "Because it was me who wrote to you. On behalf of Anthony Stone. I'm his secretary." Maria turned sharply away from the window. She rested her chin on her hand, her face almost invisible, but Alex thought she was going to cry. She was scared, desperately scared, shaking with terror. She had opened herself up to a complete stranger, and what was he going to do now? Maybe he wants to make fun of her to the whole world. He would make up an article for some tabloid newspaper, and they would quote her letter. The press could only grasp such a racy occasion. "Maria," said Alex, as if guessing her thoughts, "I erased all our correspondence because I didn't want you to remain in a false position. You just don't know this artistic, starry world. I've had to relieve Anthony of harassment from obsessive female fans many times. I'm not for 1 minute comparing you to them. I just wanted you to understand why I was involved in this story. Anthony is very busy, and absolutely all of his correspondence goes through me. He eventually read your letter, and he instructed you to answer it?" Maria said with difficulty. "Yes." Alex did not quibble. "Do you still want to see him?" Maria shook her head, which meant no. "Did you come to see me on his instructions too?" she asked. "No," Alex said. "Believe me, I'm telling you the truth. Your letter reached the wrong target, but it hit that other target. I just wanted to see you. And if you allow me—" "Go away." Maria's whisper was like a squeezed scream. Alex stood up. He looked at the girl for a few moments, then bowed his head for a moment as if in a bow, and quickly went out. "Well, did you call that girl to us?" the artist asked him in the evening. "Forget about her," Alex replied. "But if I want her to come," Anthony's eyes narrowed, "should I call her myself? I can't remember the last time a woman refused to let me see her. If you call her, I'll quit immediately." Alex leafed through the paper. He seemed to speak in a careless tone, but Anthony knew his assistant too well. "Even so?" he asked. "Exactly like that." Anthony was silent for a few minutes and then said, "That's it. Let's forget about it," and turned the conversation to another topic. The next day, Selena came to town. She didn't have to explain that something had happened. In the evening, she came to Marie and sat by her bedside. "Is it me, or is it not, that you want to tell me something? If not, I won't insist." "Mom, does first love go away without a trace, or is it like a lifelong burn?" Maria sat with her arms around her knees, looking like a little girl. Selena closed her eyes. She was definitely transported back to the days when she had first fallen in love herself. She was just a little girl then, and her family called her Lana. It was a hot summer, and they were vacationing at a campground. Torbaza Wave is a kingdom of the state in the forest. Nearby there is another recreation center, Podsnesnik, but the native Volma, to which my mother is given vouchers from the plant 100 times better. Let in Podsnesnik beautiful wooden houses, similar to the old Terums, and its own pond with lilies, but in the Wave wonderful much more. For one thing, it's on the beach. Last year, Lana and her mom and sister Lucy lived on a landing stage like a ship. The gangways, the water near the shore, it is golden like tea, and from the other side of the landing stage dark over the unknown depths. And the splash of the waves hitting the planking. When you wake up in the morning, you feel like you're being rocked. Just a little bit, lightly, weightlessly, but rocking. It's like being in a cradle. And this year they're living in a house. There's a lot of them. Tiny little houses like Pumpkinhead's shelter. Nothing fits in there but 3 beds. And if someone comes to visit and lies on the floor, their feet are sure to stick out the door. Lana, on her way back from the washroom, took one more look at her. It's okay to stand and stare. No one's up yet. Lana wakes up first, before she gets up. She does not like to get up after the general wake-up, when some odd joyful voice for the whole camp, through the speakers barked so that the bed will fly off. Comrades vacationers, wake up. Good morning to you. In the washroom immediately a crowd, and this joyful occupation to wash under the sun, under the birdsong, and cones under the feet. And the cheerful noise of pine trees is replaced by haste, the cue. Lucy taught Lana to brush her teeth for a long time so that her mouth burns and you feel like a dragon. Fire breathing. Lana taught it to her campground friends Anna and Jessica. Anna's the same age as Lana. She's 8. She lives here with her mom. Both of them are very similar. They are full-figured, soft even in appearance. Their hair is long and fluffy. Anna has everything cozy, beautiful like hers. Pink socks with flowers and pearls stitched on them. Anna is afraid to take with her, where she and Sveka usually climb a tree or behind the fence to the far bay. But how about something irreparably dirty, torn, and both of them will be upset to tears with their mother. Sveka is 11 years old. She and Lana. She is the daughter of the local music teacher, music director, and at the campground stays out of sight from the beginning to the end of the vacation. Jessica is skinny, freckled, and independent to the point that as she is around, there is no need for adults. Jessica can handle anything in the world. It's hard to imagine what would have to happen to piss her off. She herself told how at the beginning of summer, in the first shift still, on that path, which is along the embankment, deeply cracked her late bottle shard freaks that broke the bottle from Buratino. There was blood, and the heel was hanging on a string. So what? Anna asks with horror. And nothing, went with Daddy to the medical center. They're stitched up. And 10 days on one leg jumped. Here, our volleyball with Potty Snesny played, and I'm like a fan dumb is sitting. Anna, who turns pale just passing by the medical center, where syringes are stored in cabinets, is shocked and silent. And they still funny to remember at first decide to test Jessica in the window of her cabin to throw frogs. There were no frogs in the river, of course, but beyond the campground, among the impenetrable bushes, there was a path to a narrow bay. Frogs lived there pretty, even Anna was not afraid of them. The size of a nickel, green, Huskaskavshi, toys, and only. Lana even got a toad, but she didn't take it in her hands. She didn't take such a big sticky one. It's 100% warts on her hands, but jumped away, giving the toad the way. She and Anna hoped to catch Jessica with the frogs. If something alive is thrown at you while you're asleep, you'll be squealing while you figure out what it's moving. They wanted Jessica to be like them in some way. One of the frogs jumped away from Anna, and she clumsily caught it, picking up all the garbage with it. The window in the wagon was open, and they both knew that Svekin's bed was just under it. But nothing like a squeal followed. About 5 minutes later, Jessica appeared on the doorstep, wearing her father's familiar white t-shirt, which reached almost to her knees. She'd slept in it like a nightgown. Jessica wiped her face with both hands as if she were washing her face. "What asshole put sand in my eyes and mouth?" she said menacingly. And suddenly she chased after them. And since you can only catch one of 2 birds with 1 stone, it was Anna, whom Jessica could easily have caught even with her heel cut off. But Jessica not only caught up with her, but suddenly and meanly shoved a frog clenched in her fist by her scruff. And the rapturous squeal went all over the wave campground, where there he flew to the snowdrop. Breakfast. The dining room is warm after the morning freshness. Smells burnt milk. For breakfast, they always give semolina porridge. Lana feels nauseous even at the sight of the plate. At the table they sit with Lucy. It is only considered that they are on vacation at the camp with Mom. Mom doesn't have a vacation. She comes after work. But you can't travel. There's only one bus that goes here, rarely, maybe once an hour. and it stops high up on the mountain where the highway passes. It's a long way down to the shore, but it's worse to take the same route in the morning and catch the bus and not be late for work. And my mom also has a dacha, which as a capricious girl requires constant attention, to water, to weed, to harvest. And mom comes a couple of times a week, rightly reasoning that Lucy is already a big 20th year and will look after her sister. Lucy studies at the Institute of Culture and is now on vacation. From time to time, tired of Lana's tricks, she says that anything is better than practice, construction team, or even exams, as long as it is not her sister, with whom it is impossible to let her eyes down. And breakfast is a torment too. If Lana doesn't eat, she'll be hungry till lunchtime. And there are no stores here and nothing to buy. Lucy peels an egg with a sigh and crumbles it on Lana's plate to make it interesting for her to eat. She crumbles it finely, the way they used to crumble it for the chickens in the spring. This dish in the home menu is called egg as a chicken. He chops up a tomato he brought with him and salts it hard. "Do you want to go to the beach?" Lucy asks painfully. A few days ago, she'd taken a nap on the beach, dozed off, and got burned. She was lying in the cabin with a fever, and her shoulders were red, as if they had been burned with irons. Lana looks at her warily and nods. Well, yeah, where else is there to go? She knows that the sun is still healthy after breakfast and harmful from 11 o'clock on. It's like in the cartoon Wait and See when it hits the wolf on the top of his head with his fist. But Lana is not offended by the sun, probably because she loves it so much. She goes out to sit under the sun when she is sick, and if she is sad at heart, she sits and warms herself, and the light goes through her, and she is warm. And the beach is also a whole world. The sand is coarse and white. You take off your shoes and walk, falling almost to the ankle. It's like a carpet or a mattress. It's soft and fun. By the water, the sand is cold, wet, and hard. And in the water itself, it's folded like a washboard, and the glare of the light plays on it. And small fish swim by in flocks. Fry. They're more fun here than in the aquarium. They're masters here, swimming off into the unknown depths. Water's something to be afraid of, Lana knows. She used to swim along the shore, and here on one side is a landing stage. On the other side is a ship of the KUM Club of Young Sailors. Lana was swimming towards it. She was tired. She was floundering, choking, and wanted to get up. She was sure that the water under her was up to her waist, but it turned out that way, towards the ship. The bottom was sinking, and now you can't reach it with your foot. Lana's eyes are crazy. She's about to drown. She scratched her way to the shore with all her strength. The shore is 2 steps away, but from fear, it seems she will never swim to it. She shoveled herself so that she got down on her knees right away. He saw her first. They showed a French movie last night. They showed a new movie every night here, almost always Soviet, rarely French or Italian. In good weather, the movie was shown in the open air. In bad weather, on the landing stage there, on the 2nd floor, a small hall. The movie was of the cloak and sword genre. The wounded main character was being walked out by an old fisherman and his granddaughter. After many years they met, and of course, the Chevalier fell in love with the beautiful girl. And now it was his turn to save her from all sorts of dangers. The audience swooned at the hero's fencing tricks, the heroine's lush dresses, and their great love. The only really funny one was this little girl at the beginning. And this one, on the beach, was ridiculously similar to that one. In a short sundress, old, laundered, indeterminate pink color, long-legged and tanned, she waded knee-deep in the water and played with the river, caught the waves, sat down in front of them, slapped them with the palm of her hand. She had blonde hair on her shoulders, her face was also tanned, and her eyebrows were almost invisible, whitish, fluffy, and she was laughing with her whole face and all of herself, even with her arms spread out to the river. I wanted to look at her, like listening to a song or a poem. You could not take your eyes off her. Dinner's late, 8 o'clock. You go crazy before dinner. It's true that soon after dinner it's kefir hour, but that's a mockery. Already in the dark, at the door of the canteen trays with kefir. It's cold and sour. Once in 100 years there is also snowball. It is sweet, but they give it so rarely. From lunch to dinner you're starving. You don't know what to shut that sucking emptiness in your stomach with. Stores are far away. It is necessary to go through the whole forest, up the mountain to the village. And at the camp, there is only one cafe called Mill. It's made like an old mill. Inside, everything is wooden, heavy tables, benches, and it is always cool here. Lana wants to go upstairs to where the steps lead, where the wings of the mill are. She always wants to go to the top, even when she sees a tower or a lighthouse in pictures. But they don't let her go up there. From there, they announce on the radio when to rise, when to leave, when to go to the canteen, when to go on an excursion. You can't eat at the mill either. People who want to drink mostly come here. Wine stands in beautiful bottles, illuminated, on glass shelves, and it is poured into pausini glasses on thin legs. And the food is only sand cakes, like suns with sharp teeth. They're sprinkled with sugar and dry. Even teeth do not always take them. You have to soak them outside in the fountain. The shortcakes cost 16 kopecks. That's exactly what Lucy gave me. Although she's not usually generous, she gives them to her mother. There's a champagne bottle at home. Only 10 kopek coins go down the neck, like in a piggy bank. Everyone knows that if such a bottle is filled with rivnius and then broken, there is enough money for a gold ring. It would be funny to go to the bank with a knot of coins, like in the old days. And here, Lana couldn't believe her eyes. Ice cream. It was the first time they brought it on the whole vacation. Even 2 kinds of ice cream. Tomato ice cream for 7 kopecks and big briquettes of ice cream for 48. Tomato ice cream. Lana bought it in the city. It's terrible, red and sour, and it was better not to even look at the side of the ice cream. Lana put down her hand with coins and stepped back, hesitating whether to take the shortcake or to go back to Lucy and ask her for $50. "Here," said a soft voice suddenly. She didn't look up to see who was standing in line behind her, and standing there was a boy, or a young man of about 16. Skinny, swarthy. He held out to her two big briquettes, placed on top of each other, and smiled. He was a lot taller than her, but she thought they were looking into each other's eyes. His eyes were black, but it seemed to her that there was a light from them. It was only $1. This happiness cost only $1, even less. But he had never seen such a look. She, like an obedient child, told, "Take it," reached out, took it. She was already holding the briquettes against her chest, and only then did she realize that a gift had fallen to her out of the blue. A wizard in a blue helicopter will suddenly arrive. Her hands were small, clingy fingers, and her mouth was as big as a frog's. And her eyes. It wasn't the ice cream that made her happy, it was the miracle itself. She wanted it, and fate said through him. Here, he was this fate for her, since she looked at him. He himself could only look at the book, at the portraits of heroes. The girl turned and ran. She glimpsed a silhouette in the doorway, and he smiled irresistibly. He was here with the boys from the sports school, a difficult boy from a good family, a boy best not left in the city, a boy who wasn't an athlete, but could pull off stunts that a sane athlete wouldn't dare, like jumping from rooftop to rooftop. And his parents, who had a million acquaintances, got him this voucher and asked the coach to keep their son as a freedman. Just keep an eye on him, but no pressure, 'cause he'll spit and walk away. All right, if it's daytime and on the road, not through the woods at night. Sam enjoyed running with the boys in the mornings, a leisurely, bouncy pace up the forest road to the highway. He'd go for a dip in the faucet with them, and after breakfast, when training began. And he was sincerely not interested in neither skiing, nor soccer, nor boxing, and did not want to listen to the coach's nudges. He left first to be a free vacationer, but it quickly bored him, and he found himself in the yacht club Seagull in the neighborhood. Here he was taught not so much by the coach as by the great river itself. He became seasick. He was told that the best remedy for motion sickness was to peel potatoes, and he peeled a bucket of them. But with Barry, the owner of the yacht Neva, it was possible to go to the opposite shore and there to moor and rush into the mountains, to places not yet seen, and even dangerous without special equipment. Nobody laid tourist paths. Here they hung a pot over the fire and boiled potatoes. And with guys on small training yachts, which were always competing, who would overtake whom, you can catch a cheerful wind. And swimming in the open river, and having swam until exhaustion to lie on the warm boards of the deck. listening to the guys making plans for next summer to go down the river, and from there already on the Black Sea. And it was strange to return to the low Turbazov silence, where aunts rinsed their heels in a special trough, so as not to carry sand from the beach into the house, and their fingernails were so pink, manicured. Vacationers dozed in the afternoon and waited for a movie or a concert, and the phlox and rudbeckia bloomed brokenly by the dining room. Lucy went off to see a movie. They brought in an old movie with Gina Lollobrigida, and Lucy is obsessed with those beauties. She sleeps with a clothespin on her nose to make it as thin as theirs. And all the talk, what breasts, what ass. The girls weren't on hand either. Anna's mom took her to the bath, and then she won't leave the cabin. She has to dry her hair. Her hair is long and fluffy. And Jessica is cheering for another volleyball game. Lana went to the shore. The daytime doesn't smell as big water as it does in the evenings. And the lanterns on the waterfront and the lights on the passing ships and their reflection in the river are like beads. There was a white sail at the wharf, and that boy, the one with the ice cream, they were getting ready to sail with a friend, looked at her for a few seconds and suddenly called out, "Hey, you want to go for a ride?" She came closer and nodded uncertainly. "You'll get knocked on the back of the head," said the other guy. "Let her ask her mother for permission. Why don't you ask if you can come with us for an hour? Can you talk?" She nodded again, and then she took off again and ran just as easily. She ran up the steep stairs of the landing stage and stood at the door of the cinema. Would she look for Lucy there now? He wouldn't let her go anywhere. For an hour, he said. But the movie wouldn't be over in an hour. In a couple of minutes, he saw a figure under the light of the lantern. "Well, give me your paw. Jump in here." The boat looked scary small, and it was scary in general. It jumped, and for some reason I was reminded of cats that don't like water so much. He miscalculated his strength in catching her. She was as light as a kitten, and he picked her up too hard to keep her from falling. She felt as if she had been picked up like a feather. On the vest, he told her, like a little girl, "Stop, don't fidget, sit right here, and I'll lace it up on you. And now sit very still. Barry, ready? We're off." And the boat pulled away from the shore so easily that she thought again of the paper boat that carried the stream down the street. And they are now far from shore, and it's getting dark, and the wind is in her face, and there are so many stars overhead that she's spinning. "So you can talk?" he asked softly. "What's your name?" Barry was surprised, for he knew the other Sam mocking and quick. "Lana," she muttered. "The water overboard is so close." Lana didn't believe in the vest. She'd never swam in one, and she grabbed Sam's hand. She felt instantly calmer. She held him and wouldn't let go. She held him with both hands. Sam didn't take her hand away. It was funny to him that she was so afraid, and at the same time he felt like he understood her fear. Just understood, without any explanation. And she slowly began to feel like his hand belonged to her, that it was her property. Every finger, she knew them already. This big one, it's rough, and the palm is warm, and she already held them as if they were her own. "Did you see it?" he suddenly asked. "What?" she answered in a low voice. "A star fell." "Where?" She could not believe it, and wanted to ask, "Are they really falling?" As suddenly she saw herself a short and bright streak in the sky, not downward, but obliquely, not falling, but flying. She shrieked enthusiastically. Barry shook his head. He wanted to tell her that now the little sprat wouldn't go away and would follow Sam around and expect him to take her for a ride or entertain her again. But Sam sensed that Lana was taking it as well as the ice cream, like a miracle, and miracles don't have a way of repeating themselves. "Make a wish again," he said. And she was confused, didn't know what to ask for. Just don't let it end now. And she, not waiting for the star, and not even believing that it would fly by once more, closed her eyes and squeezed his hand, whispering silently, "Dear fate." "That was my first love," Selena told her daughter. "And what's next?" she asked. "What do you want to know?" Selena asked softly. "Did you never see each other again? You were only friends that summer when you were little and vacationing at the campground. Why not?" Selena's eyes were looking away now. "We had an age difference, but we were still friends for a few more years. I mean, he was friends with me, and I was in love with him." "But you married him, not Dad. How did that happen?" Sam graduated high school way before I did, and then he went to Washington, D.C., went to college there, and got married. I was starting to sing then. Everybody said I had talent. But if he had asked me to follow him, I would have dropped everything and followed him. But when I found out he'd chosen someone else, that's when art was the only thing that saved me. I wanted to prove something to Sam. I don't know what. I wanted to be famous, to fall in love with someone else. Even though Sam wasn't guilty of anything, he always took care of me like a big brother. But you didn't feel that way about him anymore, did you? Maria asked. Maybe I'm still hurt to some extent that things turned out this way. Selena said as if to herself, so be aware of your feelings, my dear. Your heart will tell you. Never force yourself into a relationship with someone you don't like, and appreciate love, even if it's unrequited. You're still very young, but that's the best advice I can give you. Other people don't get to truly love in a lifetime. They just can't. So if love comes to you, you should just thank fate for it, because it's a feeling you'll remember for the rest of your life. Are you going back to the theater, Mom? Why should I? Selena was surprised. I didn't expect you to ask me that. Darling, for the former roles I am already old, and I doubt very much that I was taken and offered something that, by and large, the theater is such a cesspool. But maybe I'll go into pedagogy. I'll teach vocal. I've wanted to work with students for a long time. Selena kissed Maria and left, but the girl didn't go to bed right away. She was still browsing the websites, and in the mail she saw Alex's letter. I failed to ask your forgiveness, he wrote, and I have a heavy feeling as if I broke something fragile or crushed a beautiful butterfly in my fist. Maria, I want to apologize to you. Maybe we can meet and talk again. The letter was long. Maybe Alex hadn't had anyone to talk to for a long time, and he was waiting for this opportunity to open up. Or maybe he realized that if he simply asked to meet, Maria would turn him down. Alex talked about his life, about how their father had abandoned them, about how hard their mother had raised them, and how he almost went down a crooked road, and then, sparing no effort, tried to get out of it, to become a good specialist, to build a career. He described how, thanks to Anthony, he got to know the artistic world, and if he himself had a daughter, he would not wish her to find a life partner in this creative circle. These are adult children, Alex wrote, not all of them, of course, but many and many. And even if you are many years younger than they are, you would still need to behave like an older woman with infinite patience and self-denial. At the end of the letter, Alex asked to see her again, and Maria agreed to see him once more. She herself was hardly aware of the feelings she had for him. Then at the last meeting, he had told her the truth, though he could deceive her further, could weave some story. Maria felt that he would never mislead her again, and she was also surprisingly calm around him. They met in the park, outside Maria's house. This time the girl was dressed up. She wore jeans and a light jacket. I wasn't at my best either, she said to Alex. If anything, make allowances for age. You know from my letter that I'm only 16. I'll be 17 soon. You can wait for someone like you for 2 years or 5 years or a lifetime. He stood up to meet her. Come on, let's walk down the alley, and I'll tell you everything. Maria looked into his face with a questioning look. His eyes were dark, almost black. It seemed to her that she was drowning in them. She nodded, and they walked down the alley, and the first yellow leaves lay before them on the dark asphalt, like gold coins.